Hi everyone, welcome to Saturday, the weekend. It's great. The sun is coming out. I keep looking at my window, not that you can see it, but I live in Ohio, so I don't see the sun a whole lot this time of year, which is really sad. Anyway, it's Carrie, and I wanted to talk about, I had a comment on a video that I'm glad this person asked. Oh, I forget your name, I'm sorry, I just looked it up too. It was on my video, which I'll try to remember to link up there, about my 6-month top surgery update. And I said in the video, yes, you can have your insurance cover your top surgery without being on hormones and when you're genderqueer non-binary. The person asked me if I had to lie about being female to male in order to have insurance cover it. I didn't actually have insurance cover my top surgery. I paid out of pocket. And there were a bunch of factors that, some of it related to transition and most of it just related to where my life was at as far as traveling logistically and knowing I was going to leave my company but not being sure. I had a 3 or 4 month window I was looking at if I was going to stay there full-time, stay there but go down to part-time, or just leave, and when I was going to do all of those things and then start my full-time internship in school. And the end result was that I left my company a little bit, a few days before my top surgery was scheduled. I just had paid everything out of pocket up front, and it was a huge even the timing for me to be able to do that was a really kind of perfect privileged trifecta of events. I knew I'd been saving to take time off this year for school, and so I dipped further into savings than I would have liked to do, but my mental health was pretty much demanding it at that point in time. And I know people will be like, oh, but you've only been out a few years, and people wait years and years for top surgery, and that's true, but despite the fact I didn't really figure my identity out, I had just terrible dysphoria about my chest my whole life since I was probably around 11 when it popped up. So it's over 25 years, and it had to happen. It had to happen. So I'm going to say I don't have a ton of advice about this, but I've heard other people talk about it, and I've talked to people that work in the medical field. So if you're a non-binary, genderqueer person, somehow under that umbrella of labels, and you don't want to be on hormones or can't be on hormones maybe for whatever reason, but you want top surgery, yes, you can get it covered. Lots of people have made videos about this or talked about it, at least in the US. I feel like I've seen one person out of the country, but I don't remember what country, but it's a thing that people do, so people do it. My only advice really is to contact your insurance carrier and say is this something that you cover? And if it is, does my employer's plan cover it? And if so, how do I need to have it submitted to them? Because what can and does often happen is your therapist writes a letter, your surgeon submits stuff, it gets coded somehow to indicate that it's a cosmetic procedure, and then your company is oh, we don't cover cosmetic procedures, we only cover life-saving procedures, which it often is, and it just has to be coded certain ways. And sometimes you have to fight back and forth between all of these offices to make it happen. So I'm not gonna say it's always an easy road and that you might not have to contact a bunch of people and go through a bunch of BS, but you can do it. Like I said, I just kind of was in this very unique position in my life that the way things have worked out, I ended up deciding not to even try to use my insurance because it would have delayed my surgery. And then it would have delayed when I could have left work. And when I didn't want to deal with that when I was in the middle of this internship at all. No thank you. So, back to the initial question, I still want to talk to you about this because the not being on hormones, being non-binary was not something that was excluded in my plan, that had nothing to do with anything. So the simple answer is no, I didn't have to do that, even though I paid out of pocket. The surgeon I went to, you could walk in off the street, and if you had some way of paying for it, whether it was insurance or out of pocket, I'm pretty sure he could care less how you identify and what you are or not on. I mean, that's just how he rolls, which is great. I actually really like that about him. So I want to talk about this a little bit more though, so I chose a therapist because I thought I was going through the process of insurance, which required at least 1, if not 2 therapist letters. So I talked to this guy, and I chose him because he was on a list of recommended people from from Stonewall Columbus, which is an LGBTQIA resource center basically. And in his little bio, he included his pronouns with his name, and I think he even talked at some point about using pronouns, and I was like, not only like this guy gets it, and like clearly he's worked with some trans people before, so I'm gonna choose him. First of all, he, like, at the very opening, he was like, yeah, he's like, it's kind of, this wasn't his exact phrasing, but like, it's BS that you have to go through this process. It's very gatekeepery. I think he did use the word gatekeeping. That anyone has to tell you what you can do with your body beyond just saying, like, yes, your body's physically, like, healthy enough to handle surgery, or you have your hormones at these levels are okay to start taking a hormone treatment, or like the physical aspects that are important, obviously, to make sure you're healthy. So he recognized that, but he's like, but that's the process, so let's go. So of course I wasn't on T and had like absolutely no intention of going on T at the time. And even now, like, it's a couple weeks before I started, and I'm excited, but I'll be surprised if I stay on it very, very long term. So that's kind of, we'll see, who knows, I might love it, I might be indifferent. I feel like that's somewhere in the middle there. But in the course of this, like, talking about my identity and stuff, I can't remember what he said, but I told him that I had seen and heard quite a few people give the advice to non-binary or genderqueer people that are not like specifically MTF or FTM to just lie to their medical professionals to get the care that they need and want. And here's the thing, like, I get it. I get that if someone's not going to recognize like a non-binary identity, but you still want to go on hormones or have surgery or something of that nature, like, that's super terrible and you need it, and at some point, like, yeah, that's probably what you're gonna do because you feel like that's your last option. But what I had said to this guy was that I can't do that. Like, I have to be authentic with people as much as I can. I can't hide who I am. I'm not good at it. I'm uncomfortable trying to do it. I can't do it. And even like the time frame where I like knew I wasn't cis, and I was trying to like find a label to explain to people my gender, so I hadn't come out to anyone yet, and it was really frustrating and like made me uncomfortable that I wasn't out to people because I knew but I hadn't like finalized it in my brain yet. And so, you know, I was like, I can't do that, like, I'm not comfortable being that way, and so I would much rather have to deal with like some BS up front but be myself and be genuine than say I'm something that I'm not, basically. And so here's why I wanted to talk about this, because this guy, this therapist, said some really important things, I think, that you should know. And this is one person, like one guy in Columbus, Ohio, who clearly works with a lot of trans people. But also, a therapist's job is to like listen to a person and usually like assess for things going on in their brain, like mentally. And in this case, his job is to assess if I mentally need this surgery, or for some of people, it might be like if they mentally like need those hormones, and if they're at a place where they're capable of dealing with anything that comes along with that type of transition. Fair enough. Which means he's pretty good at telling if you're like not being genuine and not being authentic, and if something's not right. And so even if you're not outright lying, like something will seem off. And he said he's had this experience with people where like something is off, and it might be like, he might be able to pick up specifically that it's an identity thing, maybe not, but because the person's not being like forthcoming with him, it actually extends the amount of time that he wants to see them in therapy, because he wants to make sure that he, first of all, ethically, but also just in good conscience as a person, is making the right recommendation for that person. And it's not that he wants to prevent anyone from getting services, he just needs to be able to ethically actually make those recommendations and write those letters. And I thought, well, that's really interesting insight that I've never heard anyone really talk about. And I am curious, like, if there are people who have felt like they were being denied services, but in actuality it was a situation like that where like, well, you're not sharing everything because you feel like you can't, you feel like you're going to be like shut down because people are like, oh, that's not a real thing. And in the actual, like, and at least for this guy, like, the actual situation is like, he does understand it's a real thing. He just has to like understand where you're coming from to be able to make a recommendation to start or have whatever treatment. So I kind of wanted to, well, I definitely wanted to share that because I think it's important to know. And again, like, I'm not saying like don't lie, don't embellish if that's what you need to do to get services, but I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't even like entertain the idea of doing it myself because I knew it wouldn't work for me. There are other people who maybe they're fine doing it, they have no issues, and that's what they need to do to get services, and I get it. And I, like, it goes back to, like, it's BS that somebody has to gatekeep this way in the first place. So I'm really happy that a lot of places are going much more to informed consent. My surgeon had me sign informed consent paperwork, even with a letter, so, like, told you, they don't care, that's fine, it's your body. Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about this. Unrelated, my ADHD, like, got worse in my 30s. Like, I got diagnosed as hyperactive when I was a pretty young kid, and my mom chose not to put me on Ritalin, which is what they put kids on at the time. And she was like, had magical parenting powers, and I mostly just kind of learned how to control impulses and things and like focus when I really have to. And then I hit my 30s and like, that went out the window. Like, I have so much schoolwork to do today, and I know I'm not gonna get hardly any of it accomplished because I can like feel my brain not working correctly. So I'm gonna watch this video back, and I hope it's not like terribly incoherent, but I really did want to address that. Like, you don't have to lie about who you are. You shouldn't have to lie about who you are. My personal experience and my advice would be to be authentic, and if you need to maybe explain like you're more female or masculine aligned and you still feel like you need people to interact with you in that way, that is different than having to say that you are MTF or FTM in my book. Because even like a big part of me like starting T has to do with how people are interacting with me still. And if you want to say like that's BS, like the only way you got services was by completely just saying you were binary, I believe you. Like, I'm sure that happens a lot, and that's unfortunate, and it shouldn't happen. Like, you shouldn't have to go through so much in the first place. But that's it. So like, yes, you can get it covered by insurance. No, you shouldn't have to lie. Maybe if you're looking for a therapist, like when you're calling to make the appointment or emailing them or however you're making it, like kind of ask them like, have you worked with trans people with non-binary identities before? Like, see if they even know what you're talking about. Good luck, and like, you're always welcome to ask me questions. I'll answer them as best as I can, and hopefully with a bit more focus than I have today. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.